Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. Welcome into this very special edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast. We're going to be running a 4-episode series on cooperatives, and the series is brought to you by the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals. Melina Morrison from the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals. Over to you.
Thanks, Michael. And we are just thrilled to be sponsoring this 4-episode series because co-ops, as you know, are really important. They're especially important to small business owners that need to come together to collaborate, to get more of the supply chain or to export or scale and all of the other things that we need to do with other people. So in the 4 episodes, we'll be hearing interviews that you've done, Michael, with people behind 4 new cooperatives. And you're digging down on why and how they came about in the first place, why they chose the co-op model, and the difference the co-op structure is making in their business and to their community, of course, because it's all about people before profits. So if you are a current or prospective cooperative and you'd like to learn more about how they run, I really encourage you to listen in and get inspired and learn from others who are actually doing it right now. You can listen to this episode or any of the others by searching up Small Business Banter on your favourite podcast app.
Okay, so welcome into another edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast. Moira Weir's in with me today. Moira is going to give us in a little bit of time an outline of her personal experience and a couple of the cooperatives she's involved with. As you know, this is the 3rd interview in the series sponsored by the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals on shining a light on cooperatives as a business model. So welcome in, Moira.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Really nice to be here, Michael.
Really appreciate you taking time. You've got a lot going on. So why don't you just give us a little bit about Moira, and also we're talking about Flock Co-op, but there's a story behind Flock Co-op, and you're going to tell us what Flock Co-op does and how it came about. So, but yeah, firstly a little bit about Moira, and then about the co-op, please.
Thanks, Michael. So, yes, I have been a co-op enthusiast for many, many years. My co-op journey began. I was introduced to co-ops really by a colleague, David Kilner, who had been very involved in South Australia from supporting people to create housing co-ops. And he was also involved in the early legislation here in South Australia. I know we have national legislation now, but back in the day, we all began to do our own thing. And I was completely enamoured about co-ops. And in fact, David, myself and a few others then created our own co-op, which was in those days called Social Options Australia. And it was a consulting company, a consulting co-op, and we worked in evaluation and reviews and public policy, a bit of corporate work and not-for-profits, and particularly helping organisations become more equitable in what they were doing. So there was an incredible alignment between our own co-op values and the work we did. And that we did that for about 10 years, mainly all through the 90s. And it was a fantastic experience. And so I had that, love of co-ops, both as a participant and also as someone who had, been delivering those services and receiving them. So that was great. And I've been in my own local food co-op, for instance, and like many of us, we're all members of our roadside assistance. So in South Australia, that's the RAA, which is South Australia's largest mutual. So I've, my bank over the years, I moved into more of a co-op world. In fact, I did bank with what was the Adelaide Co-op, which eventually joined with others and became Bendigo. So there's all sorts of history with me with co-ops. So it was inevitable.
And connection to the model. And I'd like to understand, how that came about if we've got time through the interview.
Sure, yeah. So as a consequence of that, it seemed obvious to me that co-ops would continue to be in my life further down the track, and indeed that's exactly how they came to me through when we established the Hen House Co-op. So for those people who are interested in it, has got nothing to do with chickens, although I do have 4 red hens running around my backyard right this very minute. What it's to do with is closing the gender investment gap. So we are a non-distributing, not-for-profit co-op with a goal to educate and advocate and also test some models about how we can disrupt the patriarchy and disrupt colonialisation and through cooperative mechanisms and cooperative endeavours.
The particular co-op that we connected over and we wanted to not talk exclusively about, but certainly focus on was Flock Co-op. And so, can you just describe Flock Co-op and how it came out of the Hen House? I think you called it the mothership, did you?
Something like that, or maybe Mother Hen.
Mother Hen, yeah.
So the Hen House Co-op incubated Flock, and just to keep those chicken metaphors going. And what we did was in June last year, in June 2021, Hen House hosted a hackathon. And the idea was that we put a proposition to teams to ask the question, if there was an online platform to support co-op creatives or people who are creatives, what could that be? What could it look like? And the provocation came about because I've been writing a personal blog for 10 years now, once a week. So if anyone's interested in that, it's just moira.blog. But I, at the beginning of the year, last year, I thought, it'd be really good if I could monetize this. It just seems like that would be a bit of a bonus, wouldn't it? So I thought, there must be a platform out there, that I could, a WordPress equivalent or something that is a co-op that I could, or owned by women was the other thing I was looking for. Because rather than giving my, $10 subscription to Silicon Valley or a bunch of blokes in a boardroom in San Francisco or London or New York, I'd rather it be going into another kind of system. And I couldn't find one. All of the big platforms out there, Marketplace and WordPress and Substack and all of those, they're all owned mostly by blokes. Most of their shareholders are men, and they're all company models with shareholders. And so that was part of the provocation. So when the groups came together at the hackathon, out of it came this idea of Flock, which would be a co-op, a distributing co-op, where the people who were creating the content would also then be the owners of it. And so we had the prototype, we did an MVP to see how it would work. And about 4 weeks ago, it took flight and got its first little wings out of the nest, and off it's now, so you can find it online at flock.coop, and we've got about 25 artisans. And so just like every entrepreneurial exercise, we did a few little pivots all along the way. So what the provocation was and what we've got now is not quite the same, but that's because we market tested, we included people, we did a lot of community consultation. And so Flock Co-op, it will be a co-op. At the moment, it's still, under our wing, but very soon we'll be able to start, those people who are participating in it will create their own co-op.
Okay, and yes, you talked a few business terms there, MVP being minimal viable product, and one of the things in this series is to try to, focus on cooperative structure or mutual structure in their various different forms, as an ownership and an operating model. But at the end, you need to be able to. The community needs to run a business, and that underpins or is what the co-op is all about. There's plenty of platforms around, and there's plenty of places to distribute content. But you've outlined there there's a community of people that wanted to showcase and own a platform that was a bit more related to their needs or their motivations. Was that a strong reason for it for coming together?
Yes, it was, and one of the reasons that we had the gap that we had identified as the hen house was that many artists and artisans in particular are pretty challenged by the digital space. They're quite good at being artists, but they may not be so good at putting their work into the world through. And in these COVID times, that became very challenging. They couldn't get their gear to markets, and lots of the usual places for their outlets were compromised one way or another. And so one of our principles in getting this going and was to make sure that we could support people to cross what I call that digital divide, so that they knew how to get their, have an online store, so to speak, plus not be compromised by only the best people's work being at the top. So we've got a process where the content of the artisans gets completely refreshed every time you press it. So it's not just the ones who are making all the money that get up the top, which is what's typical in most of the other kind of platforms like that. So again, that's a replication of not just cooperative principles, but feminist business principles, so that we are really trying to build equity into the platform itself, as well as for the participants. And that way they get a much fairer go of what's going on.
As you say, there's an algorithm in all of these, for-profit commercial, which is fine. Maybe it reflects what, it may reflect what people want. It may reflect what, they want them to want. But anyway, that's another matter. I think I can see in there that, the guiding principles on which your cooperative's based must allow for that equity. Because it's not all about a race to the top for the creators on that digital marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other principles for us is that we're cultural workers as co-op members, and we are in a very interesting time from an economics in the world and an environmental space. So we want to make this revolution irresistible. So we want the content to be beautiful and attractive in a way that will attract the kind of people that believe in the things that we believe in as well. So those things are quite deeply woven into both the platform and into the practice of hosting the co-op. And we hope that will start to then, and we're ambitious in this, but we really hope that will make that visible to the world, and then in that way continue to champion both co-op principles, feminist business practices, and the value of the arts in our society and our economy, and how it has that conversation with the way we want to make changes for future generations.
Yeah, how are the creators and artists going with that transition, without losing touch with their artistic endeavour and their motivations on the way to also, I guess, running a small business, in a friendly environment? Is that one of the? I can imagine it's the same across a lot of in inverted commas, craft or home based or micro businesses where someone does, it could be a service or a product or that, and that kind of hoping that if that they'll be discovered. But this is you need to to kind of put in some extra effort to bring people along. Otherwise,
totally agree. And we are in our very early stages. As I said, it's a month old.
Wow.
But we have, and I think for many of the people who are on the platform, some of them are doing a bit of both. They're continuing to do wherever they've already been, in shops and selling themselves. They don't have to be exclusively with us, which again is that recognition of cooperative values. I'm hoping that as the market itself starts to form around these people, and the sort of ways I would want that to happen is if you're a corporate, or if you're an organisation, a school, it could be anything, and you just say, well, we'll be buying our gifts this year from Flock. So, or if you're a co-op, I hope other co-ops come to Flock for their, their thank yous to somebody who's done something special for them, or, it doesn't even have to be in the gift, but for the birthday presents and maybe, baby showers and whatever it is. But instead of thinking, oh, I'll go to Etsy or I'll go to Marketplace, well, come to Flock. And then you'll actually be supporting the values and the people that are more closely aligned to what's important to you.
Yeah, it seems like a natural extension to to support, and the energy around co-ops at the minute is really powerful, electric. It's enabling communities to and to do things that are necessary or which sometimes is because I've referenced this a couple of times recently, the Sea Lake Hotel in Victoria, which is a pub that was, I think, up for sale, wasn't going to sell. Locals wanted the pub or a pub, so they had to do it themselves. And that's what I particularly love about cooperative models. And then in this series is a lot about sharing the experiences of why and how you did it. So I want to just come back to the you talked about minimum viable product, but I want to talk about how you kind of made it happen. But I do want to reintroduce Moira. We're talking to today on Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast. In this series brought to you by the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals. So there was a vision came out of a community coming together around some things that were important to them. Who were the key stakeholders, for want of a better term, to get it happening? I can see there's creators, maybe there's a board, maybe there's the founders, maybe there's funders. Who were the key parties?
So the community that gathered were really the hackathon community. So there were 4 teams, 3 in the room and 1 online, and then there was about 100 other people who we called a phone a friend. So often in these events, you have your mentors and your supporters, and we were in the middle of COVID world, and we knew that we couldn't have a lot of people in the space. So I invented the idea of, well, why don't we have this instead? And which was absolutely amazing. So people who were, lawyers and entrepreneurs and investors and community leaders, and they all, techies, they all volunteered. And so each of the teams could, make an appointment to phone the friend according to what needs they had over that.
This is really building things on the fly, isn't it?
Yeah. So we did all of that, which was fantastic. But that also then created a bit of a platform for us to know who was out there to support the work going forward. So once we had something in place, we did have some support from a philanthropic foundation, and they had actually given us some funds in the hen house a year or so earlier, and we had preserved some of that for whatever we were going to do in this event, but we didn't know what that was going to be. So we were able to deploy some of that, and we hired 2 of the team that kind of developed like 90% of the model. We also we gave them an opportunity, and everyone involved the opportunity if they wanted to go forward to take it to the next level. And we had a little bit of that money then and said, well, this is what we've got. Who's interested? And a couple of those people from one of the teams took that up. One who has a really good tech background, and she worked for Code Like a Girl, and another one who has a design and marketing background, who works for Studio World. And together they set up and created the minimum viable product with that. And we were then able to do some testing and build some people together. We found a small group of artisans who would have been challenged by all the issues like crossing the digital divide, and they tested everything, and we sold. We had our one little shop, and that happened over the Christmas period. And that group of people then, who were the testers, if you like, also tested and talked a lot about what it would mean to run a business and cross the digital divide and what all the issues were. So we were able to really get close in entrepreneur language, to that user experience. And then from there, we felt like we had enough to, practice going into the world. And another philanthropic foundation gave us a very small amount of money. And we set ourselves a task to try and onboard or at least educate and find about 60 people who would be interested. And
as your sort of foundation creators.
Yeah. And just as being the baseline participants.
Yeah.
And also with a view that they would be people who would want to, have an online store. Most of them be in a position where they needed to cross that digital divide because they didn't have that access. That was central to our philanthropic funder. And it was central to us in the hen house as well, because otherwise, why would we be doing it? There'd be no real reason. And then out of that, I think we've got 30 now on, and there's probably been 50 or 60 people who have been involved in this next phase. But the goal would be that as we grow into that, we will get more support from sales is where we want to generate. We want the people buying things to be our investors rather than going to market and saying, we don't want to behave like a not-for-profit. We want to behave like a commercial co-op.
Yeah.
So the Flock will be a distributing co-op when it gets to that point, and when we feel that's probably some months away, as people, it's just too much to learn all at once, and we can hold everyone together in our little nest in the hen house by looking after the co-op for now. And then we hope that they'll be in a position to start coming together. And in fact, my hope is that they'll start, saying, hang on, stop looking after us. We want to do it ourselves. And that will be the sign and the time when we're ready to know that
letting go. But it's no different to any other startup business.
Correct.
You need that. You need a problem to solve, or there's got to be a driving reason for you wanting to do that. You need hand holding, you need funding, and it sounds like with Hen House you've got that, and still have it for Flock Co-op.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had some funders. And how did that come about? Because it's a track record of doing other things. You personally and others have been involved in the co-op and working on the particular causes or issues that you really connect with for a long period of time. So that must have helped in terms of giving funders the confidence that the seed money's in good hands.
Yeah, that's just true for everything, isn't it? Investors, or even when you purchase something at the shop, you're going to choose something you feel is probably going to work. And it doesn't always do that. So, and I've been around for a long time, and I'm well known in the not-for-profit and in the entrepreneur community. I used to be the CEO of Volunteering South Australia and Northern Territory years ago. So I've got a very broad reach there. I've been on the Minister's Entrepreneurship Advisory Board for the last few years. So I'm very well positioned to support these kind of initiatives. And between us on the board, though, we have some incredible networks and fabulous people who have nurtured and supported Flock. Two of our board members have really driven that. Kate Simpson and Parika Verma, who have been absolutely outstanding in the support, and also the individual. So Lauren, who from Studio Veld, she was in the hackathon, then she was involved in the MVP, and then we hired her and Studio Veld to get the marketplace together and the tech and the beautiful website.
It does. It is beautiful. I had a good look around it, and and Studio Veld is It's a pretty funky website, that one. I love it.
Yeah, they've done a super job, and and they understand our values, and
Yeah.
they're part. Lauren's a member of the Hen House, and so it's I really feel that there's the infrastructure of goodwill and the infrastructure of community um, and a desire to do something different is alive and well. And as you said in your opening remarks, I think we're in a renaissance for co-ops, and from a female founder's point of view, women founders in all businesses do not get their fair share of the investment dollar, which is at the heart of where the Hen House comes from. So anything we can do to help close that investment gap, as well as draw attention to it, is what is our, what drives us. So we think this is also a way of divesting from patriarchy, so that instead of investing in, you're putting your gear on Etsy or Marketplace or those similar sorts of platforms, why don't you, invest in this one, which is run by a bunch of women and non-binary folks who are really trying to change the world as well at the same time.
Yeah, and a lot of those, we have such dominant platforms, and they are go-to because they just own, the media. They own advertising. It's pretty hard to move around them sometimes. So it's ground up, and in your case, we're getting starting small. Like that's one way, and it means a lot to the people in the community. And I'm interested in the development. I know it's early days, but of the creators, firstly, getting involved, coming up and looking at this. For some of them, a big digital blockage that maybe they've been artisans and not really to date kind of invested in or taken to digital media in the way we probably would encourage them to do, because there's this is a great example of an opportunity where digital is going to help them if they can embrace that without losing their core kind of interest in what they do. What are some of the have you seen some progressions, and if or others that you've need to give some extra kind of motivation or assistance to?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So it has challenged some assumptions I've had. I thought some of the people who perhaps were in my vintage, so those of you who can't see me, are older.
It's a great thing about radio, isn't it?
That's a great thing. But, they might well have had more struggle than perhaps some of the younger ones. But I do notice that even some of the younger ones have had an aversion, or it's a bit like when you don't learn to drive until you're 45 and everyone just thinks you already know how to do it. And so they've struggled with that, and have needed extra support there. Also, for people who have, one of the big things is those who are in their little micro businesses, they've never thought that their work was worthy to be in a public space and to be visible. They've just done little things off the side of their table, or said, "Oh, Mum, can you take these and sell them at work?" Or that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's
and so just see them excited and
feeling
just
worthy.
The delight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a personal transformation, isn't it? That is enabled by doing something. Let's call it a micro business, but that's at all levels that can be so powerful for an individual, for a community. Get away. From
the earrings I'm actually wearing today. I bought on Flock, and the artist sent me a personal note going, "This is the first time I've ever sold anything online. I'm so excited. Thank you. It's made such a big difference to my life."
Yeah.
Now, just someone taking the time to write a little personal note, and me knowing that I've made that contribution to her life, just was, very, very special. Very special.
For sure. We definitely want more of that. So 4 weeks or whatever it is in, it's probably, I'm not trying to add to the pressure here. I'm not, but in terms of running the cooperative here on, I mean, we've talked about how, broadly how you got started and some of the, the opportunities for change and, in the way people purchase and the way creators create. But how does, is Henhouse still kind of, it is still there in the background. So is Flock going to, or down the track of having its own separate governance? What does that look like? How does it work, month to month or week to week?
Yeah, certainly that's the plan, that it will become its own co-op and be a distributing co-op. We know that Henhouse will still need to be involved at somehow along the way. Financially, even with all the best modelling, we would need to be selling, like 10 million units to be able to cover all the costs. And so much of the contribution has been done by volunteers and, gifted time. So we know that that's going to be another big bridge to cross. But that's definitely the intention, that the artisans will be the co-op members and own the co-op. At the moment, that's not a requirement to be a Henhouse member, and so it's really that the Henhouse is hosting it. But that's what's on the agenda, and that's the plan as we build community and grow. And again, that's not unlike any business incubating another one as a spin-off, and we've seen that in thousands of other companies. And indeed in co-ops. I mean, if you look at what happened with the raspberries up in northern Queensland, they were banana and then they became raspberries. And then they've got, distribution and logistics chains that are all separate co-ops now that all link together. It's how mutuals begin, because they really, an aggregation of other businesses. So we don't see any difference there. If we look at Modrigon, the mega co-op of co-ops, that's really what they've done too. So we feel we're in very good company historically, but we are we are fledglings. We're only at the beginning.
Most, if not all, business will have that pathway, that financial pathway where it's, invest some money, get it up and running. And I guess one of the disciplines that you hope you'll see more and more with all businesses, and but with co-ops as well. There's some financial discipline. I know this is it's kind of someone's got to do that, and for all that you don't want to see all that energy and all that potential and hope for for change or for difference, and kind of dissipate just for lack of kind of understanding that there will be a period where we're going to need support, and you do everything you can to wean off that support. But there's a big dip, and often it comes as it just, in all the work I do with businesses, comes as out of left field as a real shock when it shouldn't. Sometimes it is a complete and utter uncontrollable, but oftentimes it's just that discipline to stick at and plan and and speculate about what might happen, and try to come up with some protections and solutions for it. And that's the piece where where the whole governance and operating structure is so have the right mix of people who understand that how the creators create, and but also that we've got a great opportunity here. It is a business at the core, and we need to support it along with a broad range of skills.
Yeah, we're very fortunate on our board. Parika, who has been involved in Flock, she's got a background in scenario planning, so that does help us to think those things through. Which
that was
really
a term
useful.
I was looking for. Scenario planning.
So we definitely have some in-house expertise there to help guide us and challenge us and ask us the right questions. And also we've got another woman on our board who has very experienced in co-ops and shifting to employee-owned organisations as well, and businesses. So I'm feeling quite confident that there's enough skills around us. And of course, we're never on our own. We've got the support of people, like the BCCM around us, the Co-op Federation, the community of co-ops all over the world who,
Yeah.
that's one of the co-op principles. So we know that we can reach out and get support if we need to, and equally people reach out to us for that too. So the mutuality is absolutely central for knowing how we might go forward as well.
Yeah, it's it's exciting. It really is exciting times. And what is been incredibly insightful in already, and this is the third interview, is just the diverse co-ops and mutuals is a fairly big, broad term. Break it down, and the intersection of employee ownership and distributing, non-distributing. There's so many, different, and it's and there's a place for all of them, but it's certainly not one size fits all. I think what's central, is is that purpose, or that mission that creates the opportunity and the need to do something, and we're going to have to do it ourselves. And that's why I love that energy so much.
Yeah, me too. And if people are in communities are thinking about why a co-op, I mean, the unfair advantage that co-ops have is the community itself.
Yeah.
And so that's the work. And I think it's really important to build community, and out of that, once people come together, they start to see what's important to them and how they can find ways to support one another. And that may not be a muscle that's well developed, and I think therefore you need people in co-ops who understand how communities work and how money flows through communities, and how communities and that economic base can create the conditions for more equitable and more just relationships. And so that's kind of the equation as I see it.
Yeah, I do love that unfair advantage that you can own. Like it's been unfairly distributed previously. So this is a way to grab a bit yourself. Or for community. Any unexpected benefits from that, or things that were just a little bit left field? You've been in the cooperative movement for a long time. Do you still see new ways of doing things, or?
Yeah, I mean, I do look around, and sometimes there's perverse outcomes where people think they're in a co-op and they forget that they're in a co-op and start behaving like they're in a company and treating people as shareholders rather than members. So there's a lot of what I often call not re-education but unlearning that has to happen. And that unlearning, is often quite a big tension between old paradigms and of capital and co-ops. And one of the things that I often am talking about with people interested in co-ops is that this is not new. And in fact, the way of being cooperative is fundamental. If we look to our First Nations people, they have been cooperatives. We didn't have a legal structure around that, so let's not pretend this is new. So I have, I'm constantly saying, oh, no, this has been going on. It's been legal for hundreds of years. It's a place where women first were able to vote, where they couldn't vote as shareholders or company directors. And, just keep drilling into the fact that it's always been the preferred model for humans to work together. That's how, and to look to First Nations for advice around that. And how is it that, in this land, our beautiful place, Mongana country in South Australia. And I really want the lessons I have learnt from being here and from elders and from others is that, people live together cooperatively, not just with each other, but with the environment. And and we could do a lot to learn from that. So that they're the lessons for me about how to encourage other people to say, oh, no, this isn't a new thing. Just have a think about how the world works, and you'll know that what's perverse is the way that capital has run, and with 10 blokes owning more than 75% of the whole population of the planet. Like, that's the perverse bit, not cooperatives.
No, and it gets so glamorized, and as we talked about earlier, it's just so in your face. It's this is what this is the opportunity. And perhaps the necessity for communities to take that leap to understand if you want to leave it up to the existing structure, it might happen, but it'll happen in a way that suits them, not you. So you've got to, I think that's, it's, and you've done it many times before, and there's wonderful examples around of co-ops all around the country, and indeed just good small businesses. It takes a few people initially to spark that, and then a lot more to come along. So you got to rally somehow, and make it, get the right people involved. Make sure they understand that it's the time if you want to do something about this, and the opportunities there. A couple of things in closing. I really, it's great to chat to someone who's had such a depth of experience, and can see that history of the way co-ops run is a model for, and it's not rocket science to look back and go, it's been working all right for a fairly long time. Let's keep doing it. So, firstly, just for those listening in, what Flock Co-op, what can they get there? If they
there's all sorts of things. So, there's jewellery and some beautiful handmade garments as well. There's more things coming. There's paintings, and primarily it's artworks or different kind of artisans who've got their work online. And that's where we saw the gap, the in the arts and crafts. So I suspect if you have an interest in, you're wanting to buy someone something special for their birthday or Christmas, some of the products have a bit of a premium on them because they are beautiful and they've been handmade. We have some making sure that there's no plastics and all of that kind of thing. So
environmentally, it's fair trading. Yeah, there's quite a
all of that.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what you'll find.
Yeah, no, it is some beautiful, and I can vouch the earrings are not you're not going to see them everywhere, and part of the reason for this series is to encourage current co-ops and mutuals that are maybe needing a little bit of re-energisation, or communities or others that are thinking about cooperatives as a way to get a cooperative up and running, because there's a business that it's vital in their community, and so what's your advice to those about re-energising or just getting started? I mean, you talked about the BCCM as a resource, but what are your key kind of directions to take for someone in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing for me is always to, grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine or a beer or something and get a few of them around the table and have a chat. Start from where you are, start from what is important to you, why it's important to you, have that conversation and see where the conversation takes you, and go into it with an open mind and an open heart so that you can see what's possible to emerge. I think one of the often happens, the relationship.
It's a bit of like a chatathon.
A chatathon, yeah, definitely. But I would definitely be doing that and being open to the emerging space and what's happening as a result of you coming together. and noticing, have the conversation and then ask yourselves, okay, what did we notice? Well, we noticed we really liked being together. We noticed that we were so excited we were talking over each other. We noticed that when we felt sad, we all felt sad about the same things. When we felt optimistic, we had 3 other people we could have invited into the conversation. So gathering up the noticing after you've had your little chatathon is, I think, step 1 and then step 2. And to look for inspiration and support from the co-op community, globally. There is a lot going on, and I certainly have benefited from being involved in I was part of a Modragon series last year, and we had fabulous content from the News School in New York, and which really inspired and encouraged me. Looking around at what's happening, just following CCM's press releases is enough to keep you inspired.
Yeah,
and seeing
sure
the
is.
efficacy and the encouragement that they are bringing to our national conversation about what it means to be in business and what it means to demonstrate the cooperative values in a public policy context. So, I mean, I need a bit of inspo every now and again, and that's where I go.
Yeah. And look, the other thing that's really exciting that I've seen is the breadth of industries that are covered by cooperatives. The model's very old and very well established, but also it's just so many different kinds of businesses or cooperatives and mutuals are out there that that cover pretty much what most communities are going to need. So thank you so much for your time, Moira. It was wonderful to get this time with you, and I wish you and the team at Flock.coop all the very best, as well as at Hen House. And so appreciate your time.
Thanks, Michael. It's been lovely to be on Small Business Banter with you, and I look forward to listening to the rest of the conversations in the series.
That's great. Thanks, Moira.
Well, what a great conversation. And thanks for listening in to this episode, which is part of a 4-part series on co-ops brought to you by Michael Kerr at Small Business Banter and the BCCM, the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals. And if you're interested in setting up or running your existing cooperative, we love to help you, and we have lots of tools, information and advisors. You can find everything you need to know about how to contact us on our website, which is bccm.coop. That's co-op or coop. And you can listen to the rest of this interview or search up any of the others on Small Business Banter on your favourite podcast app.